Let's go to Barbara Fritchie, who you had mentioned before. Tell us what is actually known and what is not, imagined or romanticized about Barbara Fritchie.
The Barbara Fritchie individual and the Barbara Fritchie poem are interesting things meshed together. The individual Barbara Fritchie, purely Frederick through and through. She was born in Lancaster but moved here as a young girl with her family, German, part of that German immigration to America story. The Civil War comes about, and Barbara Fritchie, they're widowed at the time, but at the time of the Civil War, she's in her early 90s, and she was seen as this patriotic person who even as a child had supposedly waited on George Washington on a trip to town and loaned her china set. But at the time of the Civil War, supposedly she didn't take too kindly to these Confederates coming in town and hanging around her well and hanging on her front stoop, and would brush them off and tell them that they should respect the flag of the country and get out. This story about this woman who flew a flag here in town, got shot at by some Confederate soldiers passing by on Patrick Street, the National Road, who didn't take too kindly of being taunted by this nonagenarian. So they took shots at her. Supposedly, the mast the staff holding the flag was snapped in two, and Barbara, being very acrobatic, was able to snatch the flag out of midair, shook it vehemently at the Confederates. "You dirty Confederates, get out of my town." And then, of course, this little narrative with Stonewall Jackson, of her uprating Stonewall Jackson, of saying, "Shoot if you must this old gray head, but spare your country's flag." And for Stonewall to blush and kind of feel at the moment some shame, and then, march on, he who harms a hair on yon's head dies like a dog. March on, he said. It's a real interesting thing, this whole Barbara Fritchie poem, because the poem itself was written as a propaganda tool, and it worked. But Barbara Fritchie wasn't around to refute it or agree with it, because she had died 2 months after the event happened, or 3 months after, in December of '62. The other star of the David and Goliath poem, in Stonewall Jackson, had died in the spring of '63. So he wasn't around in October of '63 to refute or agree with this story.